Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller, the podcast. I'm joined by Seth.
Hey, welcome, guys. Thanks for finding us on the internet.
Now, these shows originally aired on Brookings Radio, but now they're all here for your enjoyment. I hope you like it.
There you go. Sit back, enjoy the show, relax. Let us know if you want to see anything on future shows. As we said, this comes out live in the Brookings area, but enjoy this archive episode.
Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Welcome to Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. It's the fastest growing alcoholic beverage in America, and while it's not beer, it's in many ways following the craft beer movement and its growing popularity and growth of new makers. We're talking cider this week.
Cider kind of falls in this middle category. It's not quite wine. It's close to wine. It's not quite beer. It's close to beer. Cider, of course, that we're talking about is usually based on apple ciders.
That's Seth Koch from Woodlegs Brewing of Brookings. Cider was one of the most popular beverages in colonial America, but it faded in popularity over time and is now seeing something of a rebirth.
You don't necessarily boil it like you do with beer, but you can age it and carbonate it like you do with beer, like cask-conditioned beer, so you can actually get a bubbly cider. The yeast in cider is more closely to the ale yeast than it is to a wine yeast, so you'll get a lot of those yeasty characters to it. Cider has been a great alternative, and it ranges from really dry to really sweet. You can get some really cloudy cider that looks like chicken noodle soup, or you can get some really crystal clear ciders.
A number of craft brewers have moved into making ciders, something not allowed under South Dakota laws.
There's a number of breweries that have some crossover. In the state of South Dakota, we can't officially make a cider in our brewery, but we have partnered with Cider Vineyards to make, use their setup to make a cider. There's some breweries like in Wisconsin that pour ciders and beer and pop out of their manufacturing facility. And actually with what the guys over at Firehouse and Rapid are doing with their Firehouse cellars, so they actually have a winery as well, they're making now beer and wine and now cider. So the science behind it is almost identical.
Brennan Sully Sullivan at Pints and Quarts in Brookings says cider has increased in popularity significantly over the past couple of years.
The last 5, maybe 6 years, kind of gotten to the point where you have to have one, maybe two on. I think it's a good alternative for people who, if you're a beer bar, and you're only strictly a beer bar and you don't have a cider on, at least with the cider you can cater to some of the people who don't drink beer.
Check this out. Cider sales jumped 89% in 2013 and 90% in 2012. The top 4 producers are owned by major brewers, but the number of cideries is also growing. The exact number is not known, but it now certainly tops 200. More on cider when Beer Untapped continues.
The prettiest girl that ever I saw was sipping cider right through a straw. The prettiest girl that ever I saw was sipping cider through a straw.
Welcome back to Beer Untapped as we talk cider. While cider is seeing a rebirth in popularity in America, in Great Britain it has remained a mainstream popular drink. Chris Harding, head brewer at Wooden Legs, is originally from Wales.
Over here, cider is still very much, it's very much seen as a woman's drink over here, I think. The ciders that I've had that are made over here tend to be very sickly sweet, very sort of overcarbonated. It's gaining in prominence. There's a few good cider places in Wisconsin, and I think there's a really good one in the cities. But it does seem to be gaining traction over here, yeah.
In the U.S., cider's still only about 1% the size of the beer market. In the U.K., it's about 15%.
Usually in Britain, you end up with 2 ciders. Most of them make just the 2 ciders. One is sweet and one is dry. And 95% of the time, what you want is somewhere down the middle. And it's just a case of blending them off. That's all they do. It's not a big science, If you blend them down the middle and it's still too dry, well, then you go sort of 60-40 sweet or that sort of thing.
He believes cider will continue to grow in the United States.
I definitely think that that's going to be the next big thing. It's gaining traction, and not just it's gaining traction beyond the Angry Orchards and and the Red's Apple Ales and those sorts of things. People are really treating it as sort of a craft artisan product now.
I am a cider drinker. I drink it all of the day. I am a cider drinker. It's good on me.
Drew Eklund, our beer guide at Brookings Liquor Store, says they have a number of ciders on hand.
For years and years, it was basically a two-horse race between Woodchuck and Hornsby's at the store. And they had a moderate following, but then around 2012, the scene just exploded. I mean, now we have Angry Orchard, Cider Boys, Johnny Appleseed, Smith & Forge, Strongbow, Crispin, Magners, Reds. I mean, it just goes on and on. It doesn't seem like the end is in sight as far as growth goes.
The Mike Tap Handle Beer of the Week at Pints and Quarts becomes the Mike Tap Handle Cider of the Week.
Angry Orchard Cider, it's their crisp apple. It's made by Samuel Adams. It's just a light, dry cider. It does mix very well with stout or float Blue Moon on top of it, or just straight mix the two. It's a nice cider. I think it's 4.8% alcohol. It's light.
'Cause he said, I bet a bit of bitter is bound to make you see that being a cider drinker is a foolish thing to be it Thixtons, Ruddles, Fullers, or the Witchwood Brewery. He bet a bit of it would be a bit of pine. He bet a bit of it would be a bit of pine. He bet a bit of it would be a bit of pine for me.
Finally this week, a quick look ahead to Saturday, March 21st, and a real treat at Wooden Legs Brewing.
We're doing our full Irish breakfast again. So we order in the proteins from a very famous butcher out in New York, and we have black pudding and white pudding and rashers and bangers, and we put eggs on and mushrooms and beans and soda bread and tomato. So we've got the whole kit. It's going to be $16 for a full breakfast. It's going to be $10 for a half breakfast, and that includes coffee. And, of course, if you want to throw a pint in on that morning, you'll be able to do $20 for a breakfast and a pint. It's a really good deal considering where we're getting this meats from and stuff. We only do it once a year, kind of as a celebration.
It was fabulous last year, and I can't wait for the full Irish breakfast at the pub on the 21st. And that's it for this week's edition of Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Next week, women and craft beer. Until then, drink local and drink responsibly. Thank you for listening to this archived edition of Beer Untapped with Perry Miller. Feel free to listen to other episodes, and if there's anything you'd like us to talk about on a future show, please let us know. Thanks again.